What if an ancient Greek epic got a modern cinematic twist with real ships, wild weather, and a hero who wins with his brain as much as his sword? Let's open the book on this. Hi, I'm Leah, feeling curious today and excited to dive into this epic journey.
And I'm Garrett. I'm all about that perspective and ready to explore this fascinating topic. Welcome to Laid Back Learning with Leah and Garrett.
Today, we're diving into the Odyssey, the July 2026 film by Christopher Nolan.
Okay, here we go, from the top. I remember catching the IMAX prologue before another movie, and not gonna lie, it blew my mind. It's the Trojan horse sequence, super tense and claustrophobic, and the way it was shot on that huge film format just made the wood creak and the air feel thin. It set the tone, gritty, procedural, and mythic without going cartoony.
Let's set the scene for this one. Christopher Nolan, the filmmaker behind Oppenheimer and The Dark Knight, wrote and directed The Odyssey as a large-scale adaptation of Homer's epic poem. It follows Odysseus's perilous journey home after the Trojan War, with his wife Penelope and son Telemachus waiting in Ithaca. The leads are big names: Matt Damon as Odysseus, Anne Hathaway as Penelope, and Tom Holland as Telemachus. And the whole thing leans on IMAX 70mm film, a very large, detailed format that captures huge vistas and fine textures with striking clarity.
Here's a thought I've been turning over. Nolan keeps his effects tactile, lots of real locations and practical builds, with only subtle visual effects where needed. He even frames the gods as forces of nature, like Athena, played by Zendaya, not as lightning throwers, but as the way weather, currents, and chance feel like fate. Also in the cast, Robert Pattinson as Antinous, the slick suitor, Lupita Nyong'o as Helen of Troy and Clytemnestra, Charlize Theron as Calypso, and Samantha Morton as Circe. It's a pretty wild ensemble that mixes familiar Nolan collaborators with new faces.
Narratively, it takes a non-linear approach. The timeline loops instead of running straight ahead, echoing the poem's in medias res structure. In medias res means starting in the middle of the story and filling in the backstory as you go. The themes keep circling back to cunning, endurance, and homecoming. Nolan also drew a lot from modern translations, especially Emily Wilson's, which uses clear contemporary English to make the characters' motives and relationships feel immediate.
All right, let's roll on with how this project came to be. After Oppenheimer landed major awards in early 2024, Nolan said his next thing had to be something he truly owned. That led him to The Odyssey, a story he'd circled for years. Universal backed him, locking a July 2026 release, which gave him room for a global shoot in the IMAX post-pipeline.
Casting kicked up fast. Matt Damon signed on as Odysseus, bringing that mix of grit and intelligence. Tom Holland came in as Telemachus, which immediately signaled a stronger father-son thread. Then Anne Hathaway as Penelope, who's holding the household together under pressure. It's a combo that tells you character work matters here, not just big set pieces.
Robert Pattinson is Antinous, the head suitor. He compared the guy to Lester Diamond from Casino, that smarmy charm that eats a place from the inside. Fun fact, Pattinson was the only major cast member who insisted on reading the script before signing, which is unusual for Nolan's tight-lipped process.
Zendaya as Athena adds a guiding presence, and Lupita Nyong'o playing both Helen and Clytemnestra reframes famous figures with real agency. Charlize Theron as Calypso such that those island chapters aren't just detours, they're pressure points on who Odysseus is becoming.
Behind the camera, it's the A-team. Hoyt van Hoytma, the cinematographer, returned to shoot entirely on IMAX 70mm with a newly engineered lighter, quieter camera. Production designer Ruth de Jong and costume designer Ellen Moroznik are back from Oppenheimer, shaping a Bronze Age look that's impressionistic rather than a museum replica.
There was even a working title, Charlie's Tale, to keep the international shoot under wraps. Those decoy names help move gear and people around without tipping off every bystander with a camera phone.
And Damon went all in physically, strict diet, dropped weight, and grew a real beard for about a year. Nolan avoided prosthetics to keep the face and movement authentic. It's that do-it-for-real vibe, even down to stubble.
Now the production itself, a 91-day sprint starting in late February 2025 and wrapping 9 days early, which is impressive given the scale. They moved across Morocco, Greece, Italy's Aeolian and Aegean Islands, Scotland, Iceland, Malta, and the US, often chasing specific weather and tides to get that elemental feel.
And here's where it gets really interesting. For sea work, they used the Draken Harald Hårfagre, the world's largest modern Viking longship, as a stand-in for a Greek warship because it's seaworthy and could safely carry cast crew and IMAX rigs under sail. It might look anachronistic to purists, but functionally it let them capture real movement and risk.
They still balanced that with controlled water work at Universal's Falls Lake Tank in Los Angeles for sequences too risky in open water. That hybrid approach, real ocean plus tank, keeps continuity while protecting people. Safety first, cinematic chaos second.
The locations read like the myth. Greece for caves and coastlines, Italy's islands for Aeolia, Iceland's black sands to evoke Hades, and Scotland's cliffs for windswept exteriors. It's like the geography itself pushes Odysseus around, which dovetails with Nolan's take on divine influence as weather and chance.
Effects-wise, Weta Workshop handled special effects and Dina Neg did the visual effects, with Andrew Jackson supervising. Editor Jennifer Lame stitched the nonlinear timeline into legible momentum. The mantra was, prosthetics and miniatures first, digital only to extend what's already there.
There was one flashpoint during the shoot, filming at the White Dune near Dakhla in Western Sahara. The Polisario Front, which advocates for Sahrawi independence from Moroccan control, condemned it and asked for consent or removal of the scenes. Morocco's film authority, meanwhile, praised the shoot. It raised ethical questions about location choices in disputed territories.
Marketing went full event. A stealth 6-minute IMAX prologue, The Trojan Horse dropped in December 2025 ahead of other IMAX features. Then, a trailer hit online in late December 2025 and racked up about 121 million views in 24 hours. That's huge for a classical adaptation. Later, TV spots showed during NFL playoff games, the Winter Olympics, even pregame for the Super Bowl.
And there was crossover flair. Travis Scott, the rapper, appears as a bard, nodding to the Odyssey's oral poetry roots. Nolan literally compared that performance rhythm to rapping. It's a cool bridge between ancient storytelling and modern music culture.
On the sound front, composer Ludwig Göransson avoided a traditional orchestra. Instead, he used bronze gongs processed with synths, plus the lyre, a plucked string instrument, and the aulos, a double reed wind instrument. Musicians Callum Armstrong and Rosa Fragorapti helped reconstruct playable versions, and James Blake added those ethereal vocals that come in like a modern chorus.
Nolan's script tweaks are precise. He expands Odysseus's dog Argos, gives more father-son time between Odysseus and Telemachus, humanizes Circe as unsettling yet sympathetic, and complicates Helen and Menelaus's reunion. Its build is very faithful, but with choices to foreground emotion for a modern audience.
Controversies also popped up around accents and casting. Nolan used American accents and contemporary English, similar to Emily Wilson's plain language translation, for clarity. He defended a globally diverse cast, including Lupita Nyong'o as Helen, framing Greek myths as world literature rather than a closed national canon.
By release in mid-July 2026, IMAX and premium screens were the showcase. Early reactions praised the C-scale and the way divine will feels like weather and probability. It's that Nolan sweet spot. You feel the physics and still get the awe.
Let's talk about one lingering debate: the historical accuracy of armor and ships. Some historians pointed out that certain armor elements nod to later Greek periods, and the ship silhouette leans Viking more than late Bronze Age Greek. For folks new to this, the Bronze Age is the era before iron tools were common, so designs look different from classical Greece.
Yeah, and military historian Brett Devereaux has been vocal about how some choices break with the 12th century BCE vibe. I get his point. When the visuals align closely with the period, I feel more fully transported. It tightens immersion because my brain isn't doing that little, that looks off loop.
Real talk, I lean toward creative liberty here. The production design team said they worked from fragmentary archaeology, then built a coherent visual language. Coherent is key. Even ancient Greeks depicted Homeric heroes anachronistically. So, if the armor or ship silhouette isn't exact, but it serves story hierarchy and function, like signaling who's elite or who's sea-worn, I'm okay with that trade-off.
Why do you think that liberty matters more than strict accuracy in this case?
Because the film is about lived feeling as much as dates and typologies. If the materials and silhouettes instantly read as status, danger, or fatigue, the story moves. And Nolan's whole ethos is tactile realism. Capture real light, water, wind. I'd rather he pick a seaworthy vessel like the Draken to get authentic motion than build a less stable replica and fake the rest on a stage.
That's a solid point. I still think there's a middle lane where the silhouette nods closer to a Greek pentaconter while staying safe. But yeah, seeing an actual hull bite into a swell on IMAX does something CG can't. You feel the keel shudder. It's physical truth, even if it's not typological truth.
Maybe that's the balance this movie aims for: experiential authenticity, what it felt like to risk your life at sea, over forensic authenticity, precisely matching each rivet. It won't satisfy every purist, but it does create a unified world on screen.
On the pop culture side, the campaign went all in. IMAX exclusive previews, cross-promotion with the 2026 Winter Olympics and NFL playoff games, and even themed popcorn containers, a camera-shaped bucket, and a Trojan horse. It reframed a classical epic as blockbuster event cinema. That's pretty cool, right?
What if we flipped the premise? Imagine Nolan depicted the gods literally, actors on Olympus hurling thunderbolts. The tone shifts instantly. We'd be in high fantasy land with larger-than-life divine battles punctuating the human plot.
I picture towering CGI set pieces and radiant armor, almost operatic. It might attract a different crowd, fans of big mythic spectacle, while risking that tight procedural intensity Nolan's known for. The theme might tilt from human ingenuity against chaos to destiny writ large by gods, which is a different flavor.
Totally. The score would probably swell more traditionally. Instead, we got bronze gongs and breathy reeds that sound ritualistic yet modern. Keeping the gods as weather and coincidence lets the characters' beliefs carry the supernatural weight, which honestly keeps me closer to their fear and hope.
Either version could work, but the naturalistic lane locks the movie to its format choice. If you're the first feature shot entirely on IMAX 70mm, the real-world textures are the spectacle. Storms, sails, cliffs, faces. That's the show.
Thanks for joining us on this epic journey today.
Stay curious, folks, and catch you next time on Laid Back Learning.